Let's see, are we live? Yes, we're live at last. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Spilling Ink, the talk show that takes you behind the book to meet the authors and artists in the publishing industry. I am Jason, your lovely co-host, and you know what? I'm going back and forth and seeing this little Harley symbol, and it's kind of making me sad because just 2 weeks ago I actually sold my Harley, so I feel like I shouldn't even be wearing this. I got some gaffer's tape or something to cover that up. But anyhow, it's me, Jason Lavelle, again, and our lovely co-host tonight is Jane Taylor. How's it going tonight, Jane?
Hi, things are going well, and it's cool in Maine today. Not like it is out in Las Vegas where our guests are.
That's true, and it's nice and cool in Michigan today. It's a pleasant change. I've got all the windows open, no AC on.
Right.
All right. Before we get into our show, I just want to give a shout out and a special thanks to our sponsor, which is Book Branders. Book Branders is your self-publishing concierge. So they can help you with anything from packages to a la carte solutions to get your book to market. They help you with editing, marketing, building websites, building your brand. Anything that you happen to need, Book Branders can do it. And they do it for a fair price. And you can check them out at bookbranders.com. Pretty simple. But tonight we have Rick Newberry and Clay. Wait. Nope. I mean, Brian Rouff. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good. Isn't it a little early for the inside jokes?
Okay. We'll reintroduce that in about a half hour.
I'm doing fine, Jason. It's only 102 in Las Vegas. I'm in my garage. It's only 198.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's a pleasant 75 here today.
Nice.
It's like in the 60s here.
Oh, you make me cry.
No wonder you're going to a bonfire.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and Brian looks like he's ready for a party. Are you going to a party after the show?
Well, I'm going somewhere, but this is just the standard Vegas writer attire. So it's kind of a uniform in a way.
I like it. I like that a lot.
There you go. This is why we get into writing. It's not for the money. It's because we get to dress like this.
That's right. You know, it's funny. I have that same clock, that same melty clock you've got hanging behind you. I've got that it's somewhere. What are you barking at, dog? Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you do.
Well, in real life, I'm a partner in a marketing and PR firm. But in my quote-unquote spare time, I've been writing these Vegas novels for about 18 years. I've always been a writer, but more of a journalist. And, about early 2000, I got the itch and figured I'd give it a try, see if I could finish something. And it was fun, and I decided I'm a glutton for punishment, and I keep going. The one thing I have going for me is I've lived here for 37 years, and I've been taking notes. So I have a lot of material, probably more material than I have time to write it, but we'll see.
37 years. Wow, I'm only 38. You've been out there almost as long as I've been alive.
Long time. I'm 101, so I look pretty good.
You look good for your age.
You don't look a day over 40.
Thank you. Isn't that nice? In dog years.
So tell us about the books you write. These are all books that are based in Vegas, right?
They are. They're Vegas novels, and I started out because, and this is a good motivation, I was annoyed by the types of fiction and movies that took place in Vegas. I thought they were really superficial. I thought that they weren't the town that I have come to know and love. So I thought, I'm going to write it from a local perspective. I'd like the people who live here to kind of smile and nod and go, yeah, that's the town that I know. And I'd like people who enjoy visiting to feel like they're local insiders. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish, and write something that's a page turner and entertaining. If I can do that, I've accomplished my goal.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, Rick, tell us a little bit about what you write, because you're out there in Vegas too, aren't you?
I sure am. Boy, if you could do that, Brian, to give me the clue to that, okay? I write books as well that take place in Vegas. I have a trilogy called Sin City Wolfhound Trilogy, and it's not the typical werewolf nonsense. Well, maybe it's nonsense, but it's about a giant Irish wolfhound who can turn into a human. And it's about his adventures, his romance. It's goes into 3 books. It's I don't know. I think it's a page turner. I loved it.
Okay. Now, is this you mentioned romance, so I've got to ask this because werewolf shifter romances are really popular. Is that what kind of book this is, or is this more of an action thriller kind of book, or what is this?
Now I've got to keep saying it's not a werewolf. This is a wolfhound.
Okay.
Giant Irish wolfhound.
All right.
I don't know if a picture will come across.
I like
That's the kind of dog we're talking about. Because of their size, because of that picture, that's why I started writing this trilogy. It's just because of their size that they could be how I imagine them becoming human. But yeah, it's all kinds of adventure. It's nice.
Okay.
Interesting.
Excellent. I like it. I like it. And Jane, I know that you've been on plenty of times before, but can you give us a little rundown on what you're doing?
Sure. I write thrillers, I write horror, I write paranormal romance. I go into the, erotica a little bit, some of the older stuff. Yes, I'm a naughty girl.
Oh. Are there wolfhounds in it?
No, but they're wolves. And my current series is twisted fairy tales, so fractured fairy tales. So I'm currently writing Snow White's tale.
Ooh,
so and
cool.
it's got a lot of tension, a lot of I do a lot of the horror side. I can't help it. I can't help that tension and that darkness that comes through in all my stories.
And you know what? And no matter what I write, because I like to kind of break up my genres, it always seems to come back to something dark and evil happening, whether it's supernatural or completely man-made or what. It always goes dark. And like, what's wrong with my brain? Why do I do that?
People look at me and go, "You write that? Really?" I'm always smiling and laughing and making people laugh, but yeah, my books make them shake.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. So no, Rick, when did you first pick up the pen or the keyboard and start writing?
Well, I grew up in the 60s, and so naturally I was watching The Twilight Zone, One Step Beyond, those kind of half-hour shows with a twist at the end. I love the twist at the end. And I like to put that in my books. As I say, my trilogy starts off with Sin City Wolfhound, comes to the conclusion with a twist, which leads into Sin City Demon, comes to a conclusion with a twist, which leads into the finale, which is Sin City Mystic. And I just love to take the readers for a ride.
Okay. Now, are you wearing a shirt that has a wolfhound on it?
I am. This is a giant Irish wolfhound.
Awesome. Awesome.
This is way too much merchandising. I think he'd be fine.
Let's see your cup there, Clay.
Yes.
So, yeah, I don't get involved in marketing points.
That's awesome.
Hey, this was sent to me by a loyal reader of all things, so
Nice.
I really do value it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you didn't design that and buy it
I
for
had
yourself?
nothing to do with it. I went to a book group to speak, and as my present, they had created this cup for me.
That's awesome.
So this is what I have to show for 20 years of writing.
Hey, you know what? That's not half bad.
Listen, Rick's got a shirt and I got a cup.
Hey, we're well compensated.
Exactly.
So I have hopes then yet for me, because I'm only going on 7 or 8 years now, and nobody's sent me a mug yet. So anybody out there that's listening, I do like that kind of thing. I mean, I'll take bribes, put my face on something and send it to me, please.
Visualize, it will happen.
Yes. It's the secret. You visualize it and positive think it into existence, right?
Reach for the stars.
That's right. We have I work at a vet clinic, Rick, and we don't have any Irish wolfhounds, true Irish wolfhounds that come in. We have one that I think the woman called it an English wolfhound.
Uh-huh.
It's some kind of smaller mix, but it's still a really cool animal, gigantic, you know, gray wire hair, just really beautiful animals. And it's always sad to me that these bigger, amazing dogs, they have shorter lives than the smaller dogs.
Absolutely.
And, oh,
they're one of the largest breeds in the world, but they have a short lifespan.
Yeah.
And they're the sweetest dogs in the world.
They
I
are.
felt kind of bad putting some of them into the book as the bad guys, but
Yeah.
I had to do that.
Yeah, well, and the same with the Bernese Mountain Dogs. You know, just absolutely gorgeous dogs, amazing family pets, but you only live for 8 or 9 years, and God, it's heartbreaking. It really is.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I had a rough day at work today. It was packed, and we had I 5 or 6 emergency, very, very sad appointments that didn't end well, and so it's like, oh man, my mind is just got to purge that out of my system now.
Well, Jason, you bring up their lifespan, and that's part of the plot and device in the books is my hero, Adam Steele, he gets to live longer because he transforms into a human and gets that time frame. So he lives much longer than his pack. So
now, you know, here's a question for you, because this is one of the things that I would kind of perseverate on is when he turns into a human, does his dog clock, so to speak, get turned back, or every time he goes back to a wolfhound, does he pick back up where he left off as far as lifespan?
It's an even balance. He picks up where he left off.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I did a shifter, but not to a dog, to a tiger, and she was pregnant as a person, and shifting into tiger form and back and forth sped up the pregnancy.
No way.
Significantly, yes.
Was she pregnant as a tiger too then when she shifted to a tiger?
Well, yes. So
Okay.
she was pregnant, and then the shifting just sped up the pregnancy a lot faster than normal.
Okay. So I have a question for you guys. Things are about to get weird. I'm just being straight with you here. But I feel like this question can be asked because we're authors, and a lot of people are writing these shifter romances. And so my curiosity, because I don't read a lot of romance or erotic romance personally, I read mostly thrillers, is when you're writing these, you know, maybe erotic shifter romances, are you having sex scenes while they're animals, or is it while they're humans?
For me, it's humans.
Okay. But
yeah, definitely human. I got the question from my publisher when I first proposed this. They said, no bestiality. We can't print that. And I said, don't worry, that's not going to happen.
Okay. Well, and
I have no comment because I'm not shifting in any way, shape, or form.
Hey, what happens in Vegas stays with your mind forever.
But Brian does the mystery side.
Yeah, and you know, when I wrote the new book, The House Always Wins, which is based on an old house that my family and I bought in 2002, moved in and remodeled, and always felt like there was a ghost. So I just went off and wrote what I thought was this multi-genre novel. It's got a mystery, it's got a dead mobster, you know, it's a ghost story, it's a love story. And come to find out, there's such a thing called paranormal romance. I never heard it before. Now it's like, okay, this fits somewhere. So that made me happy.
Yes.
Oh, that's cool. So you've got kind of a haunted house story going on too then.
Yes, it's a haunted house based on the way I describe it in the book is exactly the way that it was. This big 6,000 square foot house in an old part of town that was in horrible, horrible shape. But we got it for a song. So we moved in, whole family, we brought it back. And then as we were bringing it back, there was weirdness going on. It could have been haunted. It could have just been an old house doing what it does. But that's all a writer needs, right, Rick? Right, Jake?
Right. Being a Brian Rouff fan, the book is excellent.
So it was enough. It was enough to get me going.
The book is excellent, and the personal connection you have to that house just really sets off this tale.
Well, thank you. And as long as we're doing this mutual admiration thing, so I read Rick's first book in the series a couple of months ago, And it was riveting. It's a page turner, and he gets Vegas right, which not many authors are capable of doing.
So he's not one of the carpetbaggers then.
He is not. And I don't know how. Are you born and? I don't even know, Rick. Are you born and raised?
No, I've been carpetbagging for 20 years now.
All right, that makes you a long timer by Vegas standards, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Yeah, you've got your cred.
Yeah, I'm writing a new book now. It takes place in Vegas. How can it not? I mean, this town has everything. It really does.
Endless material. All you have to do is go someplace, plop yourself down, and take notes.
Absolutely.
And I was out in Vegas in May, and it was my first time in Vegas. And I actually stayed with Katie and her husband we were out there, my wife and I, for a week. And we were out there doing the sites and just visiting with a friend. And it was such a cool place to be in, not just the city of Vegas, because we were all over hiking, but what a cool place. And it's kind of been our long-term plan to go there and try to spend a couple winters out there just to explore, because it's beautiful.
Great. Well, I'll volunteer Rick to show you around.
Yes.
Perfect. I can do that. I can do that. You know, everybody that doesn't live here knows that we all live on the Strip in a hotel.
In a hotel, in the penthouse, right, Rick?
Right.
And you have
there's some beautiful areas here.
Yeah, I've only been out to Las Vegas once for a business conference, and I think they had us staying at Caesars, so I only saw the Strip, and we were told if the agents want to go to the ranch, no.
What's the ranch?
Anything with a ranch in it. They know. You know.
Yeah. It's a long drive. That's all I need to tell you.
It is.
Oh, the ranch. The ranch is in Reno, isn't it?
Well, there's one in Reno, but there's one in a little town not too far from here, maybe 50 miles, called Rouff, of all things. And, but the one I believe the one on the way to Reno or in Reno was that the focus of that HBO show.
Yeah.
Ran for a while. So
okay.
That's the kind of ranching we're talking about.
Okay.
The cool thing about Vegas is, especially as a writer, you do have the Strip and you have the outlying areas. You have Henderson right next door. You have Pahrump. You have all these areas that you can say, okay, my characters go there, they go here, and it's different. It's really different. It's not, Las Vegas is not one city. It's many cities.
Rick, nice job of getting us back on the rails after that brief diversion.
We could talk about the ranch all night long, but we wouldn't.
Well, now, do you guys ever write about cities or places outside of where you've been? I mean, do you ever write?
I'm originally from Michigan, going way back, and I've got a lot of relatives there. So I always have a character, at least one, who's from Michigan. And in fact, in the latest book, I started in a small town in Michigan that I made up. It's called Scandia. And we move her out here on a whim. She falls in love with a guy, and there comes the romance part. And she moves almost overnight to Vegas. But I always have a nod to the folks back home.
Okay.
So, and that's fun.
What part of Michigan were you in?
Well, I was born outside of Detroit in a town called Allen Park. And then we moved when I was a kid to Southfield, which was new at the time and not so new now.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the area?
I actually live in Holland, so I'm on the other side of the state. But my wife grew up on that side of the state, so she's real familiar with it, and we go out there to visit her folks. So
yeah, it's a great state. I love it.
Yeah, it is. It's gorgeous out here.
The time that you have to shovel stuff.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's why we want to come out west for the winters.
Good.
Because you don't have to deal with that.
Good idea.
I'm writing I've got a book in the editing process right now. It's going to be published through Mystic Publishers. And the first half of it takes place in Mexico City, a place I've never been. But I think I do a fairly good job of describing the area. And the second half of the book takes place in Las Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah. Google Maps does a great great service in that respect, because I've written places out in San Diego, I've written things in Las Vegas, I've written New York City, I've written Italy, I was in most of those places, but not Italy, and certainly not crossing the United States. I did that on a road trip with one of my characters, so that was fun.
Now, when you do that, Jane, are you just kind of making it up as you go, or are you putting a lot of research into every location you go to?
I'm putting in a lot of research. I actually reached out to a tattoo artist in Grand Junction, no, not Grand Junction. Yeah, Grand Junction, Colorado, and got his approval to use his shop in one of my books.
Oh, that's cool.
Because I like going, because I went from San Diego to Phoenix, up, up through Sedona and out that way, and all across the United States to Maine, because a lot of my places take place in York, Maine, where our summer place is. So, but yeah, looking at the 3D things, looking around, and it was really kind of interesting.
That's cool.
You didn't have that way back when.
Interviewing people that have been from Mexico City or from Mexico, that helped a lot.
Okay.
Part of this book, called The Theory of Insanity, takes place in the afterlife, or what I call the afterworld. Obviously, I've never been there.
How about Google Maps? Does that help?
We'll try it. We'll see.
Now, what can you Vegas boys tell us about what you're writing about Vegas, but you're doing it in such a way that it's approachable for other people as well? How do you accomplish that? How do you make it so that anyone can understand it, but the locals really get it?
Rick, you want to take the first stab?
Well, you have to be honest. I mean, you have to be honest about where you live, and as honest as making up names for hotels so you don't get sued, which is fun. But I always love to bring in places where I know the locals will go, oh yeah, because I live in a section called the lakes. I put the lakes in almost every book, and I know they're going to go, oh yeah, the lakes. And then people that are not from here go, Las Vegas has lakes? I like to add some information that way.
Very cool.
And yeah, I try to put as many scenes off the strip as possible. And yet the people who live here have a certain mentality. We're an interesting town because in many ways we're like every other major city in America. And in other ways, we're like no place else. So, for example, in supermarkets, anywhere in Clark County, you're going to walk in and see a bank of slot machines. I mean, I don't think even Atlantic City and places have that. So you really want to give people a sense of what it's like to live here and some of the lore. In my first book, Dice Angel, for example, the main character found a parking space right near the casino, but that's bad luck. You use up all your luck in the parking lot. That's local legend. Right, Rick?
Oh.
Because if you have good space, you're not going to do well, at the tables. So those types of things, people who don't live here would have no idea. So it's nice.
Yeah, anything that happens lucky to you during the day, there goes your luck.
Exactly. I overheard a guy say one time he tries to make a bet every day. He could be walking around lucky and not know it. And I just thought, I jotted that down. I thought, what a great line.
Yeah. Well, and that's not a bad point. And I don't know, I guess the same goes for like the lottery and things like that. I mean, I don't really play the lottery, but you never know. It could be your lucky day anytime, right?
Right. You don't want to waste it.
Yeah.
Right.
So what if you purposefully park farther away? Does the knowledge that there was a closer spot kind of negate that?
You may as well just go home.
Oh.
Yeah, you've already ruined it.
Jason, you're starting to play the game now.
No, you guys have both been out there for a while. And Brian, you've been out there as long as I've been alive. But
don't rub it in.
What are authors getting wrong about Vegas when they write about Vegas? Guys like me who live in Michigan who have been through Vegas for a week. What are we getting wrong when we're adding scenes into our books about Vegas?
Stuff. It could be details. I read a book by a very good, successful writer who placed a lot of scenes in Vegas, and he mentioned something about the on-ramp to Maryland Parkway. Well, Maryland Parkway is just a street. It's not a freeway. It has no on-ramp or off-ramp. So he didn't do his research. He didn't use Google Maps. And his editor got that wrong. It's not a big deal, but when you're from here and you're reading it and it takes you out of the story and you just go, wow, how did that slip through? Yeah. Again, that's the irritation for me in a lot of ways. You know, you go to a lot of movies about Vegas and one second they'll be downtown and the next second they'll be at Mandalay Bay. And you're just going, wow, you know, how did that happen? Because in normal life, that'll take you 20 minutes.
Right. And as I mentioned earlier, we all live on the Strip. You know, there's nothing but hotels out here. And a lot of writers take that angle.
Hotels and girls, right?
Exactly. They take the easy way out, right, Rick?
Yep.
Something I noticed that I put in my latest book is almost every office that I go to for business has a screensaver that has water. And it might be Tahiti, it might be the Caribbean, it might be Lake Superior, for all I know. But they all have water because there's not so much water out here. So I think it's subliminal, and they like looking at something that they normally don't get to see.
Interesting.
You got to come on over to the lakes. We got plenty of water.
And here in Michigan, of course, we take the water for granted because we're surrounded by water. We're at the beach 2 times a week with our kids because we're 5 miles away. So we think it's a novelty to be able to go out west and see these vast expanses of mountains and deserts and red rocks, and that's amazing. Whereas you guys come out east and you're like, oh my God, there's water. We can drink.
And green. We go, wow, look, there's trees, there's green. So we have a lake, Lake Mead, but it's man-made. It's the world's largest swimming pool, basically.
Nice. I think, is that what the Colorado River goes into?
Yeah, when they created Boulder Dam or Hoover Dam, what are they calling it these days?
Hoover Dam.
They created that lake, and it's huge, but you know, it's not a real lake.
Yeah,
I'm going to get in trouble for saying that, but sorry.
It's not like the Atlantic that I have right out.
No.
But you guys can't swim in that. The sharks will get you. Come on.
What? Not here?
It's too cold for the sharks.
I was going to say, right?
They've had stuff down in the Cape this year. They've had a lot of sharks. So.
Okay.
Like, I don't go in very far anyway, unless I'm in a boat. So.
You know, it's funny, Brian, that your story sounds so similar and so different to my first book, because my first book was about a kind of a haunted house and a mystery thriller type of thing, and it took place in a house that my wife and I lived in, our first home, and wow. we saw some creepy stuff, and that's all it took. I was like, okay, that's got to go in a book after I move out of the house.
There you go.
We couldn't talk about the creepy stuff in the house because it seemed like it made it worse. So, but yeah, so
we moved out of the house. We sold it in 2005, and in 2014 it burnt to the ground. There's nothing left. So the only thing left is my book, and the fire was so bad it made the news. So if you Google it, you'll see the fire. I was thinking about posting that clip on my Facebook page just to give people a sense of what happened to that. So
that would be a cool thing to do because people love it when there's some kind of real life tie-in.
Right.
Yeah.
So good. I'm going to go do that right now. See you guys.
Yeah. It's not time to party yet.
It's been a slice, right?
Oh, well, Jane, did you have a list of topics for us tonight? You're the organized one here.
Okay. All right.
Is that like saying Mo was the smartest stooge? I mean, I don't know what that means.
There was a smart stooge?
Who's Mo? Come on now.
No. I do have some questions about, how you approach writing. We've heard how long you've been writing, but what's your approach when you sit down to write a new story? Do you have a beginning in mind, an ending in mind? Do you plot it out, or how do you go about it?
Well, I don't plot anything out. I spend months and sometimes years between books jotting down notes in the old-fashioned way, like this, and throwing it into one or more files. And when the story idea starts to really torment me and torture me, is when I have to sit down, and then it kind of comes pouring out. And kids don't do this at home, but I don't even use an outline. I have a general sense of where things are going. But my first two books, Dice Angel and Money Shot, there's my plug, so thank you. I had no idea. I was 2/3 of the way through each one and had no idea how they were going to end. So it could have ended very badly for me and my writing career. Fortunately, these ideas, and all writers know this, come to you when you least expect it. The ending to Dice Angel, which is a double twist, came to me while I was walking my dog. And I ran home, dragging the dog behind me, and jotted it down before I forgot. Because all writers know, if you say, I will remember it later, you don't.
Yeah, that's almost a guarantee. You're just telling yourself to forget it instantly.
It's gone forever.
Oh yeah, but things like that, walking the dog, taking a shower, just cleaning around the house or whatever, it's like white noise for your brain. And it just seems like that's when the good stuff comes.
Yes.
But what about you, Rick? What's your process? How do you go from idea to book?
Jane, you've asked the $64 million question. Where do ideas come from? And I showed you my idea for the book came from this picture. In fact, it went from 1 book to 2 books to 3 books, all from one picture. Ideas can come from somebody's name, from a character image, from a plot twist that you have. You may even have the ending in mind first and write the story around that. Who knows where ideas come from? They're divinely inspired, I think.
Sometimes a dream, right?
Yes. Most of mine come from nightmares.
Nice.
My favorite ideas come actually from my wife's dreams, because she has got, I don't know what's going on in her head. She's a sweetheart, but there's something messed up going on up there. So she'll wake me up and tell me these bizarre things that happen, and I'm just like, yep, keep going. That's going to be book 4.
You're slipping her NyQuil, so she'll go back to sleep, right?
Oh yeah. Lay down, honey. Right. No. In a lot of times, that's all it takes is one idea or one action, and you can build a whole story around it if you've got that one thing to anchor yourself on. And sometimes that's the hardest part is getting that first little spark, so that you can, oh gosh, what's the word? I lost my word for this, but when you coax a fire into life, what's that called? Yes. Come on, don't just look at me like that. You guys know what I'm.
We've got 4 writers.
You asked me for a word.
Ignite? How's ignite? Is that a good one?
Ignite, yeah.
Obviously not.
Well, somebody will write me now and tell me what that word is.
No, he said ignite. Ignite is good. I grew up reading Stephen King and Dean Koontz a lot, and I had this idea in my head that, man, these guys must just have terrible nightmares, and that's where all these gruesome, creepy ideas come from. But now that I'm doing it myself, I'm like, that might not be true at all. They just have bizarre ideas that pop up, and they write them down. And but I always write it. Yep, you got it. But I don't know. I always kind of romanticized the idea when I was a kid of these tortured writers having to write this stuff to get it out of their soul, and we're just weirdos. Yeah.
Well, I'm more with Brian on this. I don't outline, and I like to know where the character's going, but I don't want to know the end first. One of my favorite writers is Asimov, and he would write that way. He wanted to surprise himself. And I feel that way too.
Yeah, if you surprise yourself, you're going to surprise your reader. And I think at this point, we just have to trust the process that, we're not going to box ourselves in or write ourselves into a corner. And so far, so good. I don't know if you've gotten this, Brian, but I've got a lot of flack from my fellow writers. You don't outline? Are you crazy? Yeah, I don't care.
I never did until recently, but because I'm trying to get my output faster. Actually, I made my son outline the trilogy he wanted to write with me, And I made him outline it because I wrote it. I said, you have to outline it. You have to tell me where to go. And that was the first time I wrote to an outline. And it was kind of scary. And I didn't necessarily follow it because when I diverted, I pulled him in. He was 13 at the time. So
it seems like too much like school to me, and by the time I graduated, I was sick of school. So I'm not going back to that. The new book, I tried something completely different. I wrote it out of order. Every time I thought of an idea for a chapter, I would just write the chapter, trusting that the universe and my editor would help me put it together in a cohesive way. And it seems to have worked out. But it was different. I liked it. I like to push myself and try different stuff.
It's a good idea.
Well, and I think that there's a lot to be said for, outlining is good, guys. Plotting and outlining can be really, really good if you're that type of person. But I like to write for discovery because it makes the actual act of writing more enjoyable. Whereas like Brian just said, if you outline everything, it really kind of does feel like you're doing an assignment sometimes. If you know that Jane has to do this, and then Jane does that, and then Jane does this, and Jane does that. Okay, well, I don't want to write that scene. And whereas if you just
got to hit my 5,000 word limit, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But Brian has notes. Brian has notes, so you take notes and jot things down. That's my plotting. Okay, little notes like, I want them to be able to do this, this, and this. And then I have to get them to that point.
That's great to take down little ideas, and the sticky notes are a great idea. That way you remember those important things. But for me, it's kind of everything's a blank, and then all of a sudden something will pop up and click into place, and then the whole story is rolling, and I've got it, and then something else will click into place when it's ready. But I can't make it happen. It's gonna happen, whether it's next week or next month. Hopefully, God, sooner rather than later. But it just happens on its own. I can't seem to force it.
Yeah, you've got to get out of your own way. We all do. It's impossible for me to predict what's going to happen from a character standpoint. I've had characters in my mind where I thought, well, I'm just going to have them for a chapter to kind of move things along, and before I know it, it's the third most important character in the book. And when they kind of go, hey, what about me? I'm not ready to leave yet. You got to go with that.
Have you ever written anything that surprised you?
Every day. Every day. First
Because he
off,
doesn't outline.
I don't know where these words are coming from, right? So every day when I read my stuff, it's like, I'm shocked. And I'm not being facetious here. Have you ever, I think that's fairly universal with writers, yes?
Yeah. Well,
sometimes I'll write something that I think is, this is heavenly inspired. This is gold. And my editor goes, it's got to go. So,
oh my God, that's the worst. What I hate is when you start the book out and then you get it all finished. You've done all this work and you're really proud of those first couple chapters. Only your editor says, we actually need to start on chapter 2. Prologue and chapter 1 have to go. You're like, that was the best writing in the whole damn book.
Yeah.
So save it for your next book, right? Figure out a way to make it to repurpose it somehow.
Yes. Well, and you mentioned, Rick, that you end your books on a twist and then you go to the next book, correct?
Right.
Now, Brian, do you do something similar to that? Do you end on a little bit of a twist, or how do you end one book?
I wrap everything up because my books have not been part of a series.
Okay.
Although I'm thinking now my next one might be a sequel 18 years later to my first book, Dice Angel. I've got an idea that I think could work. I didn't want to do it just to do it. It has to make sense. But I do try to wrap up everything at the end of each book. But there could be 2 or 3 twists and switches back and forth before we get there. So that's kind of fun too.
Okay. Now, between books, is there any continuity between characters or anything like that, or are there any characters in common, or are they completely separate stories?
You're asking me on that?
Yes. Yes.
They're separate, although every now and then I drop in a reference to somebody from a previous book, but it's just like a little throwaway line. Oh, for example,
I like it.
the goofy best friend in my current book, his name is Boozer. I had written a story about his dad about 5 years ago, and I referenced that his dad is no longer with us due to foul play, and that Boozer was this other Boozer's son. So just real quick, most people, it won't mean anything to them unless they've read both books.
Well, and that's a great thing to have in there for fans. And I think we actually talked about this on the show a couple of weeks ago, is Easter eggs, where you add in just a little snippet from another book or story.
Mm-hmm.
And fans absolutely love that. They love it in movies, they love it in books, and I know I personally love it too. If I'm reading a book by one of my favorite authors and I see a reference to an old character from one of their previous books, I'm like, oh yeah, I get that, man. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really great thing to incorporate, because it just makes the readers feel a little bit more connected to your whole body of work.
Yeah, it's inside.
I do that all the time.
Oh,
Yeah.
I put in references to songs, to movies, that are important to me. Obviously, you can see Casablanca behind me.
Yes.
That's a big part of the Sin City Wolfhound trilogies, because the hero Adam Steele, he learns about becoming a human. He hadn't become a human until he was 2 years old as a wolfhound, and then he had to learn everything. And how does he do that? He does it by television, by old movies, by newscasts, and he falls in love with Casablanca. And I won't give away the ending. There you have it.
Now, when you're writing your books, Brian, you like to wrap everything up at the end. Rick, you have a little twist at the end. With me, and this is one thing that I've been criticized for by a couple of reviewers, say I tie things up too neatly at the end. And so I try to keep that in mind now, but when I read a book, I really like it when it's tied up neatly at the end. And that doesn't mean I don't like series, because I do like series. I like to keep going, especially if it's a great storyline. But yeah, I really like to have my plots wrapped up well at the end. So I'm like, oh man, I got some closure. I spent, a month with this book or 2 weeks with this book. Yeah, I feel like I'm getting rewarded now after that. But I also, when I'm writing my scenes, oh, hi, my wife just came down here. Hello. Okay.
Hello.
When I'm writing my scenes and chapters, I actually try to write them as if I'm writing little miniature stories in themselves. So I give each chapter its own little story arc. And any of us who have passed third grade know what a story arc is. But I think it really helps keep the reader moving through the story, even chapter by chapter, because if you've got a chapter that's just all exposition, it's just all flat information, you're going to lose them. You're going to lose me. I'm going to drop off and be like, oh, okay, this is a snore fest.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I actually have a joke with Stephen King books that it takes a good 100 pages to really get into them. That's because he's got an awful lot of detail in there, an awful lot of exposition, and he's great. He's a wonderful writer. However, we're not Stephen King. We can't do that. None of you watching out there can do that. You need to get that story moving.
Keep them moving.
You've got to grab them right away and keep them hooked. And that doesn't mean you can't have good backstory. It doesn't mean you can't have good drama. But make sure each scene that you write, each chapter that you write, you're moving your reader through the paces where you've got conflict at the beginning of the chapter, a little bit of exposition where you're telling about the character. You've got your rising action, things are coming to a head, and then if you want to end that chapter at your climactic moment, good. Move to the next chapter, move to the next POV, whatever it is that you're going to do to force them to want to read that next chapter. But so as far as book endings, I don't like doing cliffhangers. I don't mind twists, but cliffhangers, I can't do it, because I get to that cliffhanger and I'm like, oh man, I really wanted that satisfaction of having
I agree. I don't even like it in TV series.
Yeah.
Because for one thing, I'm going to forget what happened during that 7 months when it's on hiatus.
Mm-hmm.
Then I may as well have to watch the previous season all over again.
Yeah.
And that reminds me why I'm, didn't like it in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you may not have heard of this, Clay. I mean, Brian. You have this
You're
thing
gonna
now
have to
called.
explain that to your audience.
Viewers.
Okay, everybody. So our guest tonight, who claims his name is actually Brian Rouff, his little name keeps flashing up over his or his little icon over his picture as thumbnail as Clay, and he claims he doesn't know who Clay is. I'm thinking that it's some kind of strange alter ego, or his persona that he uses when he's out stalking the night.
It may be the ghost. It may be a paranormal thing.
Exactly. There's a book for you. And here's the even weirder part is I'm not on my own computer. And the person who owns this computer is named Megan. So I'll have to ask her who the heck Clay is.
Yeah.
And Clay is buried in the desert.
I also know it's not her fiance. So I could get people in all kinds of trouble.
Yeah, that's dangerous territory, buddy. If you're Megan's fiance, just turn this off now. You don't want to see anymore.
Right.
I wouldn't be.
Now, in my own defense of my little twisted 3-book series, you can pick up any one of the books and read it as a complete story. That's the way I wrote it.
Oh, good.
You can start at the 3rd book. You can start at the 2nd book, and I love it that way. In fact, I had a lady buy the 2nd book, Sin City Demon, and I said, "Do you want to start there because it starts at Sin City Wolfhound?" She goes, "Yeah, I love the cover." So I said, "Okay."
That's fantastic. Well, it's cool that they're all standalones. I like that a lot. Now, so it's a series, but they're all standalone. So what do you do at the beginning of, say, book 2? How do you go about doing a recap of book 1, or do you not do any of that?
At book 2, you introduce the character. You've got to introduce your characters. Well, not all of them, but the main one. And the reader can catch the train, so to speak, by understanding, oh, this is a shifter. Oh, it's a dog. It's not a werewolf. We're in Vegas, and off you go. There you go.
Okay.
Hello, little shifter.
Oh.
This is Mr. Sparkles. He was worried about me, so he came back down to see how I'm doing.
That's
nice of him to join us. Does he have a question?
Yes. I have a question for Brian. So, what do you do for publishing, Brian? Are you an indie author, or do you work with a publishing house?
Well, my first 2 books, I went indie, and the second 2, I got picked up by my publisher. So it can't happen. And I'm sure this is not, because this is a long conversation, so it's probably not for this particular podcast, but I can speak to the advantages and disadvantages of both. And when all is said and done, it's probably 50-50. It's just different.
Okay, fair enough. And you know what? We've actually heard that a lot from authors that have done indie work and authors that are traditionally published. They both have their merits.
They really do.
Yeah.
I can say, just briefly, that if you want to control everything about your book, then you go indie. If you're looking for credibility and building a reputation long term, then I think going through a publisher is the way to go, if that's in the cards. Okay.
What about you, Rick? Are you indie?
I decided long ago just to go the traditional route, so I held out for a publisher. The 3 books in the trilogy are published by Wild Rose Press in New York. I've gone with a different publisher for this latest book, Theory of Insanity, just because I want to test the waters out there, and okay. We'll see what happens. This is due out early next year, and I think it's a really good book, and I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, fantastic! Oh, all right, guys. Well, we are not quite at an hour, but we are a little bit over our time here, and I think it might be a good time to start wrapping things up. And unless you had anything else you guys wanted to chat about tonight,
I'm all talked out.
Oh, I could go on and on, but I won't.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting.
Yes.
And nice to meet Mr. Sparkles.
Yes.
Yes.
You're welcome. Bye, guys. Bye. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thanks to our wonderful guest here. We had some technical issues at the beginning of the show, and I'm glad you guys stuck it out through all of that. And next time we come on, hopefully, fingers crossed, we won't have any of those issues. But for all of you out there watching, thank you again. And make sure you hit the like button on there and subscribe to the show. That way, next week when we do it again, you can check it out. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, Jason.
Good night.